Dimeji took a deep breath, trying to steady his voice. I must sell Ayomide to settle the debt. Bola was devastated. Her face turned pale as she clutched Ayomide tighter. How can you even think of such a thing? He's our son, she cried, tears streaming down her face. Dimeji felt his heart breaking at the sight of his wife's pain. We have no other choice, he replied, his own tears falling freely. It's the only way to save us, and if we don't, Badejo will destroy us. He will kill us both. Once upon a time, in a small community, there lived a handsome young man named Dimeji. Dimeji was known throughout the village for his hard work and generosity. He ran a small shop in the bustling market, selling all kinds of items, from food to clothing, and his friendly nature and honest dealings earned him the love and admiration of many. Each day, Dimeji would wake up early and head to his shop, ensuring everything was in order before the market opened. He had a variety of goods carefully arranged on wooden shelves, from fresh vegetables to fruits to colorful fabrics and household items. The market was always busy, filled with the lively sounds of haggling and laughter, and Dimeji's shop was a favorite among the villagers. They trusted him so well, knowing that he always provided quality items at fair prices. In the evenings, after a long day of work, Dimeji would return home to his loving wife, Bola. Bola was a beautiful and charming young woman, admired not only for her looks but also for her hardworking nature. She supported Dimeji in every possible way, often helping him in the shop when she could, and together they were a perfect team. Their home was modest but cozy, with a small garden where Bola grew herbs and vegetables. She enjoyed tending to her plants, finding peace in the simple act of nurturing them. Inside their home, everything was neat and orderly, a reflection of Bola's diligent care. One sunny afternoon, Dimeji and Bola sat outside their small house, enjoying the gentle breeze. The sky was clear, and the sounds of birds chirping added to the serene melody of the air. Ademi, how was market today? Bola asked with a warm smile, her eyes sparkling with curiosity. Very good, my darling. We sold almost everything. People are just starting to know us well, Dimeji replied, his face beaming with pride. He felt a deep sense of accomplishment, knowing that their hard work was paying off. I'm so proud of you, Bola said, squeezing his hand gently. She knew how much effort Dimeji put into the shop and admired his dedication. Dimeji looked at his wife with love and gratitude. I couldn't have done it without you, Bola. You are my rock and my strength. He meant every word. Bola's support and encouragement gave him the strength to keep going even on the toughest days. Life seemed perfect for the young couple. They dreamed of a bright future where their business would continue to grow, and they hoped to start a family very soon. They often talked about their dreams, imagining their children running around the garden and filling their home with love and laughter. Dimeji and Bola were well respected in the village. Their kindness and willingness to help others made them beloved figures in the community. Whenever there was a celebration or a gathering, they were always invited, and their presence brought joy to those around them. 1 year into their marriage, Bola suddenly fell ill. She had been feeling weak and tired for days, and one morning she couldn't just get out of bed. Dimeji, worried sick, rushed her to the nearest hospital. The journey to the hospital felt endless, with every second heightening Dimeji's anxiety. Bola's normally radiant face was pale, and her energy seemed to have drained away completely. At the hospital, doctors and nurses moved quickly to assist Bola. She was placed on a stretcher and wheeled into the examination room. Dimeji paced back and forth in the waiting area, his heart pounding with worry. He could barely sit, his mind racing with thoughts of what could be wrong with his beloved wife. After what felt like hours, a doctor emerged from the examination room. He was a middle-aged man with a kind face but a serious expression. Dimeji hurried over to him, his voice trembling with anxiety. "Doctor, what is wrong with my wife?" Dimeji asked anxiously. The doctor sighed, looking at Dimeji with a mixture of concern and uncertainty. "We don't know yet, but we have discovered something. Your wife is pregnant." Dimeji was shocked and overjoyed at the same time. "Pregnant? That's wonderful news, but why is she just so ill?" The doctor nodded. "It's a good news, but her condition is concerning. We are not so sure of why the sickness is so severe, but she needs to stay in the hospital until we can ascertain her condition better," the doctor explained. Dimezi's joy was quickly overshadowed by worry. He nodded, determined to do whatever it took to save his wife and unborn child. "I understand, doctor. Please do everything you can to help my wife." As the days turned into weeks, Bola's condition did not improve. The doctors ran numerous tests, but the cause of her illness remained a mystery. Dimeji spent every possible moment by her side, holding her hand and reassuring her that everything would be perfectly fine. He brought her favorite food, hoping they might lift her spirits, but Bola had a little appetite. "Bola, you need to eat something," Dimeji urged gently one day, offering her a bowl of pepper soup. "I'm trying, Dimeji, but I don't feel hungry," Bola replied weakly, her voice barely a whisper. "Please, you need to eat, at least for our growing baby," Dimeji said. Sometimes she would force herself, other times she would throw up. The medical bills began to pile up quickly. Each day at the hospital added to the growing expenses, and Dimeji's once thriving business began to suffer. He had to close the shop early to visit Bola and missed many days entirely. The regular customers noticed his absence and slowly they began to take their businesses elsewhere. One evening, as Dimeji sat by Bola's side, he tried to keep his worries hidden. "Don't worry about the shop, Bola. Just focus on getting better," he said, trying to sound reassuring. Bola looked at him with tired eyes, sensing the strain in his voice. "I know it's hard, Dimeji, but thank you for being here with me," she said softly. Dimeji squeezed her hand, fighting back the tears that threatened to fall. "I will always be here for you, Bola, and we will get through this together." But as the months went by, Bola's condition showed no signs of improvement. The medical bills continued to mount, and Dimeji's financial situation became increasingly dire. He found himself staying up late at night, trying to figure out how to pay the bills while keeping his shop afloat. Despite his best efforts, it became clear that their once stable and happy life was crumbling under the weight of Bola's illness. Desperation began to set in. Dimeji knew he had to find a solution, but he felt trapped and helpless. Each day was a struggle, and he could only hope that a miracle would come to save them. With Bola confined to the hospital, Dimeji found it increasingly difficult to manage his shop and cover the mounting medical expenses. He spent sleepless nights worrying about his wife and their unborn baby. His business, once bustling with customers, began to dwindle as he spent more time at the hospital. Each morning, Dimeji would open the shop, hoping for a busy day, but his heart was not in it. Customers noticed his distracted demeanor and the decline in the variety of goods he once offered. The shelves, once overflowing with fresh produce and vibrant fabrics, began to look sparse. Dimeji did his best to keep up appearances, but it was clear that things were beginning to fall apart. Friends and family initially offered help, but as Dimeji's financial struggles persisted, they started to distance themselves. The once supportive community began to turn their backs on him, whispering about his misfortunes. I heard Dimeji's shop is almost empty now, one villager whispered to another. Yes, he's always at the hospital. Such a shame, the other replied. One evening, as Dimeji was closing up the shop, an old friend Tunde approached him with a concerned expression. Dimeji, you must be careful, Tunde warned him. People are talking. They say your business is failing. I know, Dimeji sighed. But what choice do I have? Bola needs me, and so does our unborn child. Tunde placed a reassuring hand on Dimeji's shoulder. I understand, my friend, but try not to lose hope. Things might turn around. Dimeji nodded, appreciating the concern, but feeling the weight of his reality. The once vibrant market, which had been his pride and joy, was now a source of stress and despair. Dimeji kept his financial troubles a secret from Bola, not wanting to add to her worries so that she could get well soon. Each day, he put on a brave face, assuring her that everything would be fine. He didn't want her to feel guilty or stressed about the situation, knowing that her health was fragile. How are things at the shop? Bola asked one day, her voice weak but filled with concern. Well, everything is under control, Dimeji lied, forcing a smile. Just focus on getting better, my love. Bola looked at him with a mixture of trust and doubt. She knew Dimeji well, enough to sense that things were not as smooth as he claimed, but she decided not to press further, hoping that her recovery would ease his burden. As the weeks turned into months, Dimeji's situation worsened. The medical bills continued to pile up, and his savings were nearly depleted. He tried to think of ways to cut costs, but there was little left to sacrifice. He began selling personal items and pawning valuables, but it was never enough. One particularly tough night, after a long day of trying to keep the shop running, Dimeji sat alone in their small living room, surrounded by bills and receipts. The weight of his situation pressed further. He felt utterly overwhelmed. He knew he had to find a solution, but every path seemed blocked. I can't keep this up, Dimeji muttered to himself, burying his face in his hand. There has to be a way out of this. As Bola's due date approached, Dimeji's desperation grew. His business was a hanging thread, and the hospital bills continued to climb. Each visit to the hospital reminded him of how dire the situation was. Bola's condition remained unchanged, and the doctors insisted that she needed constant care until she delivers her baby. One evening, Dimeji sat with his last remaining friend, Tunde, at a small dimly lit bar in the village. The air was heavy with the scent of palm wine and roasted meat. Tunde looked at Dimeji with a serious expression. Dimeji, I know things are tough, Tunde began, hesitating slightly. There might be a way to get the money you need, but it is a very risky one. Dimeji looked up, hope flickering in his eyes. Tunde, what do you mean? Tunde leaned in closer, lowering his voice. I can introduce you to Badejo. He's a loan shark and his interest rates are very high, but he can give you the money you need quickly. Dimeji's heart sank. He had heard of Badejo and knew of his reputation. Badejo was notorious in the village for his harsh terms and the misery he brought to those who couldn't pay him. But with no other option in sight, Dimeji felt cornered. The next day, Tunde took Dimeji to a small rundown building in the outskirts of the village. Inside, the air was thick with a smell of tobacco, and the dim lighting gave the place an airy feel. Badejo sat behind a cluttered desk, his eyes sharp and calculating. Dimeji, I can help you, Badejo said with a sly grin, looking him up and down, but it will cost you dearly. Dimeji hesitated. He knew the risks but saw no other option. How much interest are we talking about? He asked cautiously, his voice trembling slightly. It is a steep one, Badejo replied, leaning back in his chair. But it is the only way you can cover all your expenses. You will owe me double what you borrow, and it must be paid within 6 months. Dimeji's heart pounded in his chest. The terms were too harsh, but he felt he had no other choice. Bola and their unborn child needed him, and with no other option, Dimeji decided to take the loan. Okay, I accept, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Badejo's grin widened. Good choice. Now you may sign here, he said, pushing a contract across the decks. Dimeji signed the papers with a heavy heart, feeling as if he had just signed away his soul. With the money in hand, he used it to clear his other debts, pay Bola's medical bills, and buy all the baby items they needed. He bought a crib, tiny clothes, and soft blankets, hoping that these small preparations would bring some joy to Bola and ease all of her worries. At the hospital, Dimeji tried to keep a brave face. He brought the baby items to Bola, who smiled weakly at the sight of them. Thank you, Dimeji. These are beautiful, she said, her voice filled with emotions. Dimeji kissed her forehead gently. Anything for you and our baby, he replied, trying to hide the fear and uncertainty gnawing at him. The financial relief was temporary, but it gave Dimeji a moment of peace. For a brief time, he felt like he could breathe again, but he knew that the real challenge lay ahead. Repaying Badejo would be nearly impossible, and the thought of failing weighed heavily on him. A few weeks later, Bola gave birth to a healthy baby boy. The hospital room, usually filled with the sterile smell of disinfectant, was now alive with the cries of a newborn. Dimeji was overwhelmed with joy and named him Ayomide, which means my joy has arrived. For a moment, all their troubles seemed to vanish as they gazed at their newborn son. Honestly, he's so beautiful, Bola whispered, tears of happiness in her eyes. She looked exhausted but radiant, her face glowing with maternal pride. Yes, he is, Dimeji agreed, holding Ayomide gently. We are so blessed. He marveled at the tiny fingers and toes of his son, feeling a surge of love and protectiveness like never before. The nurses bustled around, making sure Bola was comfortable and that Ayomide was well taken care of. For that brief period, the harsh realities of their situation seemed distant. The doctors confirmed that Bola was fit to be discharged, although they recommended a lot of medications. Dimeji took his wife and child home, and visitors came to see the new addition to the family. Friends and family who had distanced themselves began to show up with gifts and well wishes. Even the village elders came, offering blessings and advice for the new parent. Congratulations, Dimeji, one elder said, placing a hand on his shoulder. Children are a blessing from Olodumare, raise him right. Thank you, Baba, Dimeji replied, bowing slightly in respect. The first few days at home with Ayomide was a mix of sleepless nights and tender moments. Bola was still weak, but her spirits were lifted by the presence of their son. Dimeji juggled his time between the shop and home, trying to balance the demands of his business with the needs of his family. Despite the joy Ayomide brought, Dimeji couldn't escape the growing worry about the future. The looming debt and the high interest from Badejo began to weigh heavily on his mind. Every night, after Bola and Ayomide had fallen asleep, Dimeji would sit at the table, staring at the repayment schedule. The figures seemed impossible, and the reality of their financial predicament loomed like a dark cloud. One evening, as Dimeji rocked Ayomide to sleep, Bola noticed the deep lines of worry on his face. "Dimeji, what is troubling you?" she asked gently. Dimeji forced a smile, trying to mask his anxiety. "It's nothing, Bola, just the usual business worries." Bola reached out and touched his arm. "I know things are hard, but we will get through this together. We have Ayomide now, and we must stay strong for him." Dimeji nodded, her words providing a small comfort. "You are right, my love. We will get through this." But as the days turned into weeks, the pressure mounted. Badejo's deadlines were fast approaching, and the interest kept accumulating. Dimeji tried to think of ways to increase his income, but his shop continued to struggle. The villagers, sensing his desperation, began to avoid his shop, afraid that he might ask them for financial help. The joy of Ayomide's birth was slowly overshadowed by the harsh reality of their situation. Dimeji's mind raced with thoughts of how to make ends meet. The once vibrant dreams of a bright future seemed to fade, replaced by a constant state of worry and fear. A few months passed, and Badejo soon came knocking, demanding repayment with his high interest. He arrived one morning, his presence as intimidating as ever. The sun had barely risen, casting long shadows across the village, as Badejo's henchmen stood menacingly behind him. Dimeji opened the door with Ayomide in his arms. The baby's innocent cries, a stark contrast to the tension in the air. "You know why I am here, Dimeji," Badejo said without preamble, his voice cold and demanding. Dimeji's heart raced. He had hoped for more time, but reality was harsh. "We need more time," Dimeji pleaded, his voice strained. "I will pay you back, I promise. Business has been slow, and with the baby." Dimeji cut him off with a dismissive wave. "You have 1 month," he warned, his eyes narrowing. "If you fail, there will be great consequences. You know me. If you don't, go and ask around." The threat hung heavily in the air as Badejo turned and walked away, his henchmen trailing behind him. Dimeji watched them leave, his mind racing with worry. Bola came to the door, concern etched on her face. "What did he say?" he asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Dimeji sighed heavily. "He gave us 1 month. If we don't pay, he will come for us." Fear and stress consumed Dimeji as he tried to find ways to make ends meet. Each day felt like a race against time. He worked tirelessly at the shop, trying to attract customers with discounts and special offers. He would spend hours at the market, bargaining and negotiating for better prices on goods, hoping to stretch every naira as far as possible. Despite his efforts, the little money he made was barely enough to feed his family, let alone repay the debts. The once vibrant and busy shop now seemed a shadow of his former self. With fewer customers and dwindling inventory, the villagers, aware of his plight, were sympathetic but hesitant to offer help, fearing Badejo's wrath. One evening, after a long and fruitless day at the shop, Dimeji sat down with Bola at their small kitchen. The room was dimly lit by a single oil lamp, casting flickering shadows on the walls. Ayomide slept peacefully in a makeshift crib nearby. "We need to find a solution, Bola," Dimeji said, his voice filled with desperation. "I don't know how much longer we can keep this up." Bola reached out and took his hand, her touch gentle and reassuring. "We will find a way, my love. We have to stay strong for our son, Ayomide." Dimeji nodded, her words providing a small measure of comfort. But deep down, he knew the clock was ticking. The family lived in constant fear of Badejo's threats, and the looming deadline a constant source of anxiety for them. Every knock at the door sent a jolt of fear through Dimeji's heart, and he found himself looking over his shoulder worried that Badejo and his henchmen might appear at any moment. He tried to shield Bola and Ayomide from the worst of it, but the strain was evident in his eyes, and the lines of worry etched on his face. As days passed, Dimeji's desperation grew. He considered selling the shop, but the thought of losing their only source of income was too much to bear. He reached out to his friends and family, but many had already given what they could, and others were reluctant to get involved. One afternoon, while Bola was resting and Ayomide napped, Dimeji sat alone, contemplating the situation. He felt trapped, like a man standing at the edge of a cliff with nowhere to turn. The weight of his responsibility pressed down on him, and he struggled to find a way out of the mess they were in. He thought about the last person who had owed Badejo. Badejo had killed him and thrown him into a ditch without any consequences. He didn't know what to do, and he stayed there, lost in his thoughts. With the repayment deadline approaching and no money in sight, Badejo gave Dimeji an ultimatum: repay the debt or face my severe consequences. I show no mercy. Dimeji felt as if the walls were closing in on him. The once supportive village now seemed filled with the eyes that judged and whispered. Desperation gnawed at the soul, and the constant fear of his family's safety was so unbearable. One evening, as the sun set and the sky turned a dusky orange, Badejo arrived at Dimeji's house. His expression was cold and unforgiving. "Time is up, Dimeji," Badejo said sternly. "Where is my money?" Dimeji's heart sank. "Please, Badejo, I need more time," he pleaded, his voice cracking. "I have tried everything. Just give me a very little more time." Badejo's eyes narrowed. "No more time. You have until tomorrow morning, and if you can't pay, there will be severe consequences. Again, I show no mercy. If you don't know me, go and ask around." With that, Badejo turned and left, leaving Dimeji standing in the doorway, feeling utterly defeated. Desperate and with no other option, Dimeji made a heartbreaking decision. He sat with Bola in their living room, the air thick with tension. Bola held Ayomide close, her eyes filled with worry. "Bola, we need to talk," Dimeji began, his voice shaking. "I have no other choice." Bola looked at him, fear and confusion in her eyes. "Dimeji, what do you mean? What are you talking about?" Dimeji took a deep breath, trying to steady his voice. "I must sell Ayomide to settle the debt." Bola was devastated. Her face turned pale as she clutched Ayomide tighter. "How can you even think of such a thing? He's our son," she cried, tears streaming down her face. Dimeji felt his heart breaking at the sight of his wife's pain. "We have no other choice," he replied, his own tears falling freely. "It's the only way to save us, and if we don't, Badejo will destroy us. He will kill us both. He might even harm Ayomide." Bola shook her head vehemently, sobbing uncontrollably. "No, Dimeji, please, there must be another way. We can't give up our son. Not this one." Dimeji felt a wave of despair wash over him. He knew the decision was unthinkable, but he saw no other option. The weight of their situation pressed down on him, and he felt utterly helpless. He reached out to hold Bola, trying to comfort her, but she pulled away, unable to comprehend the enormity of the sacrifice he was considering. "I love you both so much," Dimeji whispered, his voice breaking. "I don't know what else to do. We need to survive, and this is the only way I see that would protect us," he said. Bola continued to cry, her heart breaking at the thought of losing her only son. The room was filled with shared grief, and the future uncertain and bleak. Dimeji knew that the decision he was making would haunt him forever, but he saw no other way out of their dire situation. He didn't want Badejo to kill him and his wife. And as the night wore on, the weight of their decision hung heavy in the air. Dimeji held Ayomide close, memorizing every detail of his son's face, knowing that the next day could change their lives forever. The thought of parting with his son tore his soul, but he felt trapped by the relentless demands of their debt. The day Ayomide was taken away by Badejo was the darkest in Dimeji and Bola lives. Badejo arrived early in the morning, with his demeanor cold and unfeeling. With a heavy heart and trembling hands, Dimeji handed over his son to settle the loan. Ayomide, sensing the tension, began to cry, his small hands reaching out for his parent. "Badejo, please take care of him," Dimeji begged, his voice choked with emotion. Badejo's expression remained indifferent. "The debt is paid," he said curtly, turning away with Ayomide in his arms. Bola fell to her knees, sobbing uncontrollable. "My baby, my Ayomide," she cried, her heart shattered into a thousand pieces. Dimeji knelt beside her, his own tears falling freely. The weight of the situation bore down on them, leaving them in a state of deep despair. The days that followed were filled with a profound sense of loss and grief. Their home, once filled with laughter and dreams of a bright future, now felt empty and cold. Bola and Dimeji struggled to cope with the gaping hole in their lives where their son used to be. "How could we let this happen?" Bola cried, her voice trembling with anguish. She paced the living room, clutching a tiny blanket that once belonged to Ayomide. Dimeji's heart ached at the sight of his wife's pain. He felt the weight of guilt and sorrow pressing down on him. "I am so sorry, Bola," he said softly, his voice breaking. "I thought it was the only way to protect us." The community they once called home now shunned them. Whispers and glances followed them wherever they went. Friends and neighbors, who once welcomed them with open arms, now avoided them, unable or unwilling to associate with their misfortune. "They sold their own child," some whispered. "How could they? They must be cursed," others said, shaking their heads in disapproval. Dimeji and Bola found themselves isolated, their social circle dwindling to nothing. They faced each day with a heavy heart, mourning the loss of their son and the life they once knew. The pain of separation was a constant companion, a wound that refused to heal. Despite the overwhelming grief, Dimeji held on to a glimmer of hope. He knew that they had to find a way to bring back Ayomide, but he didn't know how to. "We will find a way to bring him back," Dimeji vowed, his voice filled with determination. "I promise you, Bola, we will get our son back." Bola looked at him, her eyes filled with tears, but also a spark of hope. "Do you think we can?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Dimeji nodded, his resolve strengthening. "Yes, my love, we will not give up. Ayomide is our son, and we will do whatever it takes to reunite with our family." They clung on to that promise, finding strength in their shared determination. The road ahead would be long and arduous, but they knew they had to fight for their son. Together, they began to form a plan, hoping that one day they would hold Ayomide in their arms again. Determined to bring Ayomide back, Dimeji embarked on a grueling journey of relentless hard work. He took on any job he could find, no matter how menial or demanding. From dawn until late into the night, he labored tirelessly, driven by the vision of reuniting with his son. Each morning, Dimeji rose before the sun, heading out to the market to offer his services as a porter. He carried heavy sacks of grains, vegetables, and other goods for market vendors, earning a few naira for each load. His back ached and his muscles screamed, but he never complained. In the afternoons, he took up work at construction sites, mixing cement and hauling bricks. He assisted them, and the work was back-breaking, but he knew he needed to do this. The pay was small, but every coin he earned brought him one step closer to his goal. He often returned home covered in dust and grime, his body exhausted but his spirit unbroken. Bola too contributed in every way she could. She took on sewing jobs and mending clothes, stitching clothes for the neighbors and selling handmade items in the market. Late into the night, by the dim light of her lamp, she worked tirelessly, her fingers deftly sewing and repairing clothes. Despite their effort, progress was very slow. The debt loomed large, and the amount needed to buy Ayomide back seemed insurmountable. Yet Dimeji and Bola never lost hope. They leaned on each other for strength, their love and determination fueling their relentless pursuit. One day, as Dimeji was working at a local farm, helping to harvest yams, an elderly man approached him. The man had heard of Dimeji's plight and was moved by his dedication and hard work. "You are a good man, Dimeji," the benefactor said, his voice kind and compassionate. "I have seen how hard you work, and I know the burden you carry. I really want to help you." Dimeji looked at the man in disbelief and hope mingling in his eyes. "Sir, your kindness is more than I can repay," he said, his voice trembling with gratitude. The benefactor smiled warmly. "Sometimes we all need a little help. I will give you the money you need to get your son back. Consider it a gift from one father to another." Tears filled Dimeji's eyes as he grasped the man's hand. "Thank you, sir. Thank you from the bottom of my heart." With the benefactor's assistance, Dimeji raised enough money to buy Ayomide back. He and Bola made their way to Badijo's place, their hearts pounding with anticipation and fear. Badijo, upon seeing the money, was taken aback but reluctantly agreed to the exchange. Ayomide, still as beautiful as they remembered, was brought out. The moment Bola saw her son, she ran to him, scooping him up in her arms. "My baby, my precious boy," she whispered, tears of joy streaming down her face. Dimeji embraced them both, his heart overflowing with gratitude and relief. "We are together again," Bola whispered, holding Ayomide close. "Thank you, Dimeji. You kept your promise, and may God bless the man who had helped you." Dimeji smiled through his tears, his heart filled with gratitude and hope. "Yes, we will rebuild our lives with newfound strength and hope." The family returned to their place, where they were now welcomed with open arms by those who had once shunned them for selling their child. Their story of perseverance and love had touched many, and the community rallied around them, offering support and encouragement. Dimeji and Bola rebuilt their lives, slowly but surely. Dimeji expanded his shop, and Bola's sewing business flourished. They faced their future with renewed determination, knowing that their love and resilience would carry them through any challenge. They cherished every moment with Ayomide, never taking for granted the precious gift of family. The hardships they had endured had only strengthened their bond, and they faced each new day with gratitude and hope, ready to tackle whatever life threw at their way. Badijo was still in shock. He never believed they would be able to raise the money. But then, Ayomide never meant anything to him. All that matters was getting his money back. Dimeji and Bola stood as a beacon of hope to many, and they lived happily ever after with their son Ayomide. The moral lesson of this story is that perseverance, family and community support, hope and kindness are crucial in overcoming life's challenges. Dimeji and Bola's story teaches us to never give up, to prioritize family and value support, to hold on to hope and to show kindness and compassion to others. Through hard work and determination, even the toughest situation can be overcome, and love and resilience can bring families back together. Thanks for watching this captivating story on African stories and folktales. Please don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell for more stories. Thank you.